Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, or Dead Reckoning Part 2, is the 8th film in the Mission Impossible franchise. The 4th in a row to be directed by Christopher McQuarrie, and features a fantastic list of names in its cast. It is supposedly the final Mission Impossible film, and in terms of its stakes and set pieces, it certainly feels like it might be. So I waited a bit before recording this review to really let my feelings settle on this one, because there is a lot to unpack here, but I will try and keep this spoiler free. An immense amount of work goes into a film like this. Supposedly a $400 million budget, it's one of the most expensive films ever made. It's the finale to one of the most beloved franchises of recent times, and to me this probably is the best and most consistent action franchise out there. The run of the last 4 films has been incredible. I wasn't particularly taken with Dead Reckoning on first watch, but it clicked with me much more in a second, and now I do think it's one of the best in the series. I would say you are better off having seen the other films in the franchise, specifically the first, the third film, and probably a couple of the more recent ones, probably 6 and 7. A lot is going to be lost on you otherwise, and even though there's plenty of exposition to bring you up to speed, it helps if you've got a bit of a reference point. So, everything has been leading to this. And sadly for me, I think The Final Reckoning is the first film in the franchise to really miss the mark. Now, it has good intentions, good moments, and some of the best set pieces in the franchise. But it's almost 3 hours long, and good moments don't carry a 3-hour film. But let's start with the real positives, because there are still a few. This film features 2 incredibly well shot and edited set pieces, sequences with legitimate, breathtaking tension, real stunt work of course. There is 101 behind the scenes videos on YouTube for this film, and most importantly, the stunts feel real. There's no cutaways, there's no CGI. I won't go into details to avoid spoilers, but the set pieces we all want to see are here and they deliver. And if you do manage to catch this in IMAX, it has a really creative ratio switch for you to watch out for. And I will say this, if all you want from this franchise is epic stunts, this film will win you over. It has that greatest hits vibe. It packs in everything you love about this franchise, from characters, references, stunts, impossible exposition, a sprinkling of espionage. A lot of sequences will feel familiar, but they are not worse because of it. And I mentioned how great the cast was earlier on. There's so many faces here that are just a joy to watch. And this film does try its best to give everyone a moment too. And of course, Tom Cruise works harder than ever before to lead it all. This is the first film where Ethan Hunt truly felt out of his depth, and I like Tom Cruise's more touching performance here to accommodate that. And I do think there's some really fun riffs on the musical formula too. But unfortunately, it all amounts to a rather frustrating, exhausting, and at times baffling experience. And worst of all, it's just not that fun. It's a deeply serious film, one that is intent on raising the stakes to the absolute extreme, but losing all of its humor, connection, and drive in the process. The first hour especially of this film is so caught up in its own legacy, it literally does feature a greatest hits montage. There's an ungodly amount of flashbacks, exposition, and shoehorned references. It actually ended up reminding me at times of Solo, a Star Wars story, of how they tried to connect and find an unexplained origin for almost everything related to that character. It's a very muddled mess that is thrown at us with breakneck speed, leaving almost no scene a moment to breathe. I was a little dumbstruck in the first 30 minutes because I couldn't quite believe how much they fumbled the setup to this film. It didn't even feel like a natural continuation of Dead Reckoning. Its tone is almost entirely different. I'm just going to give a light spoiler warning for a couple of bits of general criticism I have going forward, just in case you really want to go into this film blind. Something that really bothered me here compared to the previous films is this film's almost entirely set underground. The scale of this film is supposed to be the biggest, but it feels limited because we are only ever told that. We are mainly just underground in tight, claustrophobic spaces. It made the film feel much more dull in its sets, colors, and scope. The stakes felt artificial at times, no pun intended. Ethan is also isolated a lot here. The team dynamic doesn't quite come together like it did in the last few films, and for Haley Atwell's Grace, that's only just been introduced to us in Dead Reckoning, she is severely underused here. She was one of the best parts about Dead Reckoning, and it felt at times as though she had been reduced to a love interest with a question mark above her head. Her arc in Dead Reckoning was really well handled, and she contributed so much to that film's final act. And in terms of the script, I think this film has some of the most questionable dialogue in the franchise. Alec Baldwin's Destiny speech in Rogue Nation always felt a little too much, but this film doubles down on that sentiment and it gets a bit overwhelming at times. This is to me the first film in the franchise where it felt like they had their two set pieces and they just threw together a plot to service them, which is all the more unusual considering this was set up as a direct sequel for the first time in the franchise. But it is a film obsessed with looking back instead of providing an entertaining present. The overall plot feels dark, cold, and quite cruel at times, which might work occasionally, but it wasn't the best way to close out the show. It's missing its fun, its sense of adventure, and the villain might be the weakest in the franchise too, and his connections to Ethan and their history together seems to have mainly happened off screen. I'm not going to ramble too much more about this because I am a huge fan of the franchise. And unfortunately, I just couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment that shrouded the first hour of this film, and it made it quite difficult to enjoy the awesome stunts that do come in the second and third act. Perhaps I need to rewatch this, but I can't deny the breathtaking work on display here. I just wish I enjoyed the context it was happening in. But I do have to say, there is heart here. It's buried underneath a lot of stuff, but it is here, and this film does deliver some touching moments. And I want to end on a positive note. Despite feeling overcooked, the fire is still burning. There is some great character interactions and moments, and they do hit hard. Most franchises don't come close to the scale and tenacity of the Mission Impossible films. And even though it does feel like it falls at the final hurdle, the run has been incredible. And this film doesn't take away from any of that. Fallout is still one of the best action films of the 21st century, Ghost Protocol has one of the best set pieces in any action film, and the Black Vault scene in the first film is iconic and has become cemented in pop culture. I can see a couple of the sequences in this movie going down with the likes of those. And let's not forget, the music in these films is always fantastic. But in this case, it certainly rings true that sometimes it's all about the journey and not the destination. So that's all I have to say about this one. Do drop a comment and let me know what you thought of the film, and please consider subscribing. And with that, all that's left to do is to thank you very much for watching.